Hi, I'm Colleen Lowe. Welcome to the show, Born to be Brave. And today's guest is amazing. Her name is Sonia Ramirez. She's the multi-unit queen. And I met her this last week, and I'm like, I have to interview you as soon as possible. I know you're going to fall in love with her, and you're going to learn so much from her. So, welcome to the show, Sonia.
Thank you, Miss Colleen. I'm so excited to be here. I was excited when you asked, and I'm like, yes, of course, I will be here.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, my goal not just this year, is to empower women, especially women over 40, to gain financial freedom through investing in real estate and real estate, the different modalities of real estate or buying businesses. But when I met you, I'm like, oh, everyone has to meet you. And so thank you for agreeing to come today.
No, thank you. Like I said, I'm always excited to be asked. And then when you told me the vision and you told me what you wanted to do, I was like, oh yes, 100%. I need to be there.
You definitely do. So I'm going to have you just briefly tell people what you do. And then I want you to tell us about your background too, like maybe your childhood, if it maybe shaped your coming to this point. And we were talking before the show about how this wasn't your first career, right? And so just tell us a little bit about what you do currently and then how did you get to this point?
So let's go backwards in
Yeah.
time, right? Because I always say that I always joke around and I say this is my origin story.
I love that, right?
Right? It's
Yeah.
like the superhero thing. It's like this is my origin story. But I've been in real estate now for 8 years. This will be my eighth year. And different to what other people did, I started off as a developer. I started off in acquisitions for a developer. And that's how my journey started. And so I have gone back into flipping and multi-unit, flips and holds and adding value. And that's why I say my superpower is highest and best use, because we constantly are looking at how to maximize the potential of a property, right?
Yeah.
But that all started 8 years ago. And so right now, let's go way back then. So grew up in Orange County.
Uh-huh. So you're local.
I'm local Orange County native, Anaheim, grew up in Garden Grove area.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was what you call it, engineer for Sony.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then my mom worked at a factory, right? My dad passed away, unfortunately, when I was 18 in an accident. And then just kind of really saw my mom, struggle for a while, but then really kind of take off and just be super independent and do whatever it kind of takes, right?
Yeah.
Like she would work nights in the factory always, right? So she would work overnight, and she decided she wanted to be a translator for like court records and medical records.
Oh, wow.
Right? But she had to go to school for that. And she
Yeah.
had to learn how to get on a computer to do all that.
Yeah.
So
Skills.
right?
Yeah.
And she just said, you know what? I'm going to work overnight 8 hours until 7 in the morning. I'm going to go to class from 8 to 12. And then I'm going to take, computer classes from 12 to 2 and then go home, sleep, and do it again. And she did that for almost 2 years.
Wow. What an inspiration.
Right. So watching her do that,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, anytime I think anything is impossible, I'm just like, think about what my mom did, right? Just to get herself out of a funk, get financially into a better place, right? Just all of it. I was like, wow. So
that's impressive, right?
That was super impressive.
I have a saying that when you squeeze an orange, what comes out?
Pulp.
Orange juice.
Or orange juice?
Yeah, orange juice. Yeah, pulp too. But your mom was squeezed, right? Her husband died. He was probably the primary breadwinner. And she had to figure it out.
25 years. They had celebrated that year.
Oh, John's going to fix something on your ear. Hold on. We have a little interruption there. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, keep going. Okay.
Yeah. So they had been together for 25 years. That was a major thing for her, right? Then after kind of putting around for 4 or 5 years, she decides that she wants to move to Pittsburgh.
Oh, wow. From California.
From California. Never had lived anywhere outside of Mexico City. My parents were Mexican. I was the first born here. My brother and my sister were still born in Mexico. So I was first generation. And she decided she needed a complete change of life. And she was like, hey, I'm going to sell my house. And literally within 6 months, I'm the youngest. So my siblings and I helped pack her up, sell her house, and moved her cross country to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, talk about self-sufficient. right? This is a model that I grew
Yes,
up
what
with.
a hero in your life.
Right.
What a role model, right?
Definite role model.
Mm-hmm.
And so mom goes out there, takes my grandfather with her, her father, and just made a whole life out there. And we would go visit her and we would, spend time together. It really did deepen our relationship
Yeah.
tremendously
Your mom.
with my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even though, it was as children, you kind of want your parents to stay close, right? You want to stay close to them. You don't want to, at least especially in Latino culture, right?
Yeah.
But it would have been extremely selfish of us to be like, no, you have to stay here for us. We're adults at this point.
Yeah.
We're all living our lives. So
So she moved.
so she moved and we helped her move and it was amazing. So in this whole time, I start working for city government
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much started working for city government in college, I would say. So during college, I'm working for the city of Santa Ana, Parks and
Mm-hmm.
Rec.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Love Parks and Rec. I work part time there. Work part time in City of Garden Grove, City of Anaheim.
I
I
love
was,
it.
yeah,
Parks and Rec, they do so many fun things.
yeah, and I would do after school programs
Mm-hmm.
and special events for the city and seniors, and I loved it. And I decided that's my career.
Mm-hmm.
And then went to look full time for a position. Couldn't find something in Orange County, so I ended up in Huntington Park. I ended up in
Oh,
Southeast
yeah.
LA.
Yeah, I know exactly where that is.
So got to know the Southeast cities really well. Maywood, Cudahy,
Bell.
Bell
Bell
Gardens,
Gardens, yeah.
right? All of that strip
Yeah, I used to
coming
work
down.
up there a long time ago.
Oh, so there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked in Paramount, but a
Okay.
lot up there.
Yep.
I forgot about that, but yeah, I know every inch.
Well, and then we were talking about as women that we are so dynamic in the way that we move, right?
Mhm.
It was like
Yeah,
things just didn't line up in Orange County. I wasn't going to wait around
yeah,
to see if, a position opened up here. I said, I've never lived in LA. I've never had to work in LA, but if this is where it's taking me, this is where I'm going.
yeah. God
So-
took you there.
exactly. So I ended up moving to Long Beach
Oh.
and lived there for 9 years to be
Mhm.
closer to work because I didn't want to live in LA.
Mhm.
So I took Long Beach and lived right by the beach, loved it.
Yeah.
And then worked for the city of Huntington Park for 9 years as a Parks and Rec supervisor. And, again, learned a tremendous amount. But I always had a side hustle,
Mhm.
even as a child, actually. And this goes back to like entrepreneurship that runs deep, right?
Yeah, even as a kid.
Even as a kid. So my mom, like I said, worked at factories, right? And she
Mhm.
would work at like a plastics factory. They would make like keyboards and stuff,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And they'd have these big injection molding machines where that would create the little keys and whatever. And when they would break down, they would have to cool down the machine
Mhm.
and then restart it. And this glob of plastic would come out of the machine
Uh-huh.
and it would harden, right?
Uh-huh.
And my mom thought that they were cool looking and she would bring them home and she'd be like, "Oh, look, this kind of looks like a different shape." And and she would bring them home. I started creating things out of that and selling them at school, right?
That's awesome.
I started making like pencil holders and I'm all of a sudden selling all these things at school. My mom is like, "Where's all the stuff that I brought?" And I was like, "Oh, I sold them."
So you're resourceful.
Very resourceful. So that was in elementary.
Mhm.
I also started like hosting all the like the talent shows and all that stuff. So I always knew that I loved being on stage, and that started from same thing from elementary, Toastmasters and the whole deal.
So you love the camera.
I do. People that have met me know how shy I am. So yeah, so that started with that. So those two journeys I think are very linear. My
Mhm.
entrepreneurship and me liking to be on stage and educating and presenting and being in that realm, right? So going into junior high, I started we used to go down to Mexico a lot.
Uh-huh.
Get dental work done, healthcare stuff.
Yeah.
Like probably every other month we'd go down to Mexico. And they'd have these little woven crosses. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if you ever remember them, but they were
Yeah,
these
I
little
know
woven
exactly
crosses with the little tiny, like
Mhm.
stone in the middle.
Yeah.
And I remember coming back with one of them, and people were like, "I love that in junior high," right? And I was like, "I'll start taking orders." So I start taking orders. I started selling them for $2 each, and I was getting them a quarter for a quarter from the
Yeah.
lady in Mexico.
That's awesome, right?
I had the whole school wearing little necklaces,
Crosses.
but like in probably in 3 months time,
Yes.
everybody had one. I was the latest trendsetter there.
Isn't that amazing?
But it's things like that. Like I was always in this mindset of business, like
Hmm.
of there's got to be more, right?
And I think that the mindset of there's of growth and possibility and always adding value
Mm-hmm.
is so important.
Yeah,
It's what connects us when people feel like there's more possibility for them. And
exactly.
there's always, I love that you were talked about a side hustle because you have to have that active income coming in so you can make your passive income. I think so many people
Exactly.
think, oh, I'm just going to get into real estate and I'm going to quit my job and start. And it's like, well, actually, it doesn't work like that, right?
It's an actual business.
It's an actual business and it takes time
Yeah.
to learn the skills and to make the
And
contacts.
the capital and the startup and all
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
right? So then how did you go from working at the Parks and Rec in Huntington Park to getting into real estate? How did you make
Make
that
that
leap?
leap. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from Huntington Park, like I said, I was in network marketing all the time that I was
Uh-huh.
in that because
Yeah.
I was like, there's got to be something else out there. And
And
network
you learn a lot in network
That's what I
marketing.
was going to say. Network marketing gets a bad rap, and I
Uh,
understand why, because I don't like some of the tactics, the
yeah,
bait and
yeah.
switch, but the business education that comes when you actually
Yes.
take advantage of the classes and the community. And I was born again.
Yeah.
I had one of the biggest spiritual struggles of my life, but several years before I got into network marketing, and through network marketing, because there was a component of worship
Yeah.
and I was involved in it, that I completely credit that for saving me in
Brought you
that
back to
sense.
God. I love
Completely brought me back.
I love that. And it's funny. I was in network marketing a long time ago and I made a lot of money in it and made some really great friends and then that company got bought out and they just the company that bought it didn't understand network
Hmm.
marketing and so they completely really they restructured the pay scale and the way it worked and then it completely dismantled the whole thing because
Right.
overnight it just dissolved. But I spoken on a stage I think in front of like 5 or 8 thousand people, back in the day. That was a long, long time ago. But I did it and I feel like I understand what you're talking about because a lot of people have a really bad stigma with it.
Oh yeah.
And there are some weird people in every
There
business,
is.
right?
Yeah.
But I do think that it's part of your stepping stones. And I feel like each experience makes us who we are.
Oh, completely.
If we take any of those experiences away from us, then we aren't really who we are.
Right. Good and bad.
Good and bad. I think pain is a powerful teacher.
Completely. And I think that's pain and I hate to say it, a little bit of pettiness. All right. When
Hmm.
when you go, I'm gonna do this in spite of someone,
Hmm.
I think that's a great motivator sometime. I don't think you need to hold on to that negative emotion, but it is a driver for a lot of things. And
And it's good to prove that you can do things, right?
yeah, I think that has, and as a woman, we talk about this, right?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we're always in that position of we have to prove things that more than anyone else, because we're underestimated from the
From the
beginning.
beginning,
From the beginning.
especially in the real estate realm. I feel like there's other realms, other industries that are not so male dominated, but I do feel like the real estate industry is very heavily male dominated. We were talking about this, and one of our goals, both of our goals, this is what really attracted me to you, is I'm not afraid to speak. I love speaking. I
Right.
do keynote speeches. I know you do too. And when you go to a real estate investment seminar, if you've been before, you know what I'm talking about. There'll be a token woman or two or none.
Right.
And that's pathetic at this stage at 2025 because there are a lot of women who are very successful with very large portfolios,
A lot of women.
a lot of women. And so we either going to be creating our own stages and I know there's a few women that are killing it in that area that I just love, like Amy Majori and
Yeah.
Vina Jetty and there are some women out there just killing it, right? But I feel like growing up, somehow the way we train women when they're from a child, at least my generation growing up, right? I don't feel like we were taught to take risks, and to invest in real estate and to hedge on ourselves so much as in general. I mean,
Right.
of course we were in some areas. Do you know what I'm saying? And some people
Yeah.
are the exception, but it is interesting that even when you go to so many things, it's it's mostly men.
Yeah, that is disheartening still. That
Yeah,
really is disheartening because again, there's so many great women doing great things and you can easily find them online. It's not like they're in the
they're
shadows,
hiding.
right?
Yeah,
They're not doing this quietly.
yeah,
They are
they're known.
that's what I'm saying. They're well known. They have a great presence. They have a community, a lot of them. And you're
Hmm.
going, why are they not
On these stages.
these stages? Why are they not featured more? And
Hmm.
again, I mean, it's great to name off the 5 or 6 that everybody knows, but there's so many out there.
Others.
Yeah, there's
Hmm.
so many out there. So, well, so going back
Okay.
to when I was in Huntington Park, like I
Hmm.
said, the network marketing was always something that I had going. It wasn't always super successful. And that was
Hmm.
what I got to tell people because people are like, oh, you must have been
Yeah.
making a ton of money. I wasn't. I was breaking even or making a little bit, but I was
Hmm.
never like super, super successful. But the business and the community were really what attracted me. Then they gave me an opportunity to open the first wellness clubs for one of the companies. And it was very kind of Herbalife like,
Hmm.
right? They were
Yeah.
modeling it after that. And they said, we want you to open the first ones in the country. And I said, oh my gosh, well, I can't do that and work full time.
Hmm.
And so I gave the city 6 months notice and I
Oh,
said,
wow.
yeah, in 6 months, I'm going to be leaving. And I got my staff ready and I got all my programs ready. Cause at this point I was teaching tiny tots 3 and 4 year olds. I was doing after school programs. I had team volunteers. I was doing all the special events for the city. I was emceeing all the special events for the city. So all these things were happening. And I was like, okay, this is it.
You gave him a lot of notice.
Gave them a ton of notice.
Yeah.
Left on a really high note.
Yeah.
Things were great when we left. And yeah, I went, opened up a wellness center, opened up a second center, all in the Southeast cities. And within a year, they went kaput. So
Belly up.
belly up, I had cashed out my retirement. I was like, I'm betting on myself. Again,
Hmm.
mom was super encouraging. Do what you need to do.
Yeah.
It was never. This is another thing that I think was interesting as a Latina and as a Mexican American. A lot of times, when you're first generation, you get told, no, 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 no. You need to go
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
You
Go to school,
go
get
to
a
school,
job,
get a
become a
job,
doctor,
do the
engineer.
safe thing. Here's the
Yeah.
American dream. Here's the path, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
My parents never once do I remember them saying, like, you can't do that, right? I remember them a couple of times making comments in Spanish. He said, estás loca, right? And that means you're crazy. Right? But it wasn't because they didn't say we're here for you. It
Yeah.
was kind of like, oh my gosh, you got a crazy idea, but go for it, right?
Yeah.
It was never this. There wasn't any kind of the cultural things that happen a lot of times, and I'm so grateful for that because when I talk to other women, especially
Hmm.
that are my age and that are first generation, they were like, oh, I had to fight tooth and nail with my family for them to understand what I was doing, and I was like, yeah, I always had the support. I did. They were always like, oh, you crazy, but go do it.
Yeah.
We
What a
support
blessing,
you. Right.
right?
And so when I left the city, when I told my mom I was going to leave the city, she was like, Mija, whatever you want to do, well, how can we help you? How can we support you? And I was just like, okay, well, it's going to be tight for the first couple of years, right? And so I did end up launching a backup plan at the same time. I launched a marketing company. So my marketing company was to help specific with nonprofits because I had such a large network of nonprofits working for the city.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I can grant write for them. I can do special events for them. I can raise money for them. And that way I will get paid. And again, passive versus
Active
active income,
income.
right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to be able to survive, right? So within a year, my wellness clubs go under, the company got sold to another company. It was not the same, all of that, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, uh-oh. But at this point, like I said, I had my marketing company. I had started picking up more marketing clients. I started expanding into businesses that were trying to target Latino emerging markets. And I was like, great, this is a niche, right? I
Yeah.
moved back to Orange County, had picked up even more because I had been part of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And I was, again, always understood that networking was a huge, huge component of what I did.
Yeah.
And
Networking's huge.
it was always like, where's my community? Where's my network? Because that's
Hmm.
going to have my resources for the next thing that I'm doing. Um, and so I got back to Orange County, started picking up more clients. But what would happen is that I would have these big gaps of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like do a special event for, let's say, South Coast Rep,
Mm-hmm.
right? They had this big Latino event for, Mexican Independence Day, and I was helping market for them, and I was doing all these things, and then nothing. There'd be a lull. And then I'd have another big event, and then nothing. And I just said, okay, I need to be able to fill these spaces because, again, this is barely getting me by.
Yeah.
I was struggling my first 2 years as an entrepreneur. And I was like, okay, I need to do something else. I've always wanted to get into real estate. How do I get into real estate? I don't want to be an agent. I very adamantly said the first time, I do not want to be an agent.
Good idea. I've been an agent for 20 years.
And I'm licensed now.
Yeah.
But initially, I
Oh,
fought that tooth and nail.
yeah,
I did
yeah.
not want to get my license. I was like, no, no, I don't. And so I started researching, how do you get into real estate without
Being
a
a,
license, right? Without being licensed.
yeah.
I stumbled across wholesaling. And so I was like, oh, wholesaling. Oh my gosh, this sounds amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do? I sign up for a mentoring course, right? Or, one of those
Yeah.
masterminds,
Yeah.
$25,000,
Yeah. Yeah.
put the rest of my savings in it. I think I put the rest on credit, and I was like, I'm going to make this happen. Took the course. It was online. I don't even remember the name of the course. And this is the crazy thing is I take it, I go to I think they did an in-person in Sacramento. I do all of this stuff, started another network marketing company on the side because I was like, I still need, again,
Money.
income
Yeah.
coming in. I do all of this for like 3 months every week. And at the end of 3 months, nobody's in California
Mm-hmm.
is from this group. And I'm like, now what? I have all this knowledge, I have all this information, and I have no idea how to practically apply it. And I was lost. And I just said, I don't know what to do next. And I was like, okay, I just spent all this money. And I was
Yeah.
freaking out. I'm freaking out. I just spent all this money. I don't know what to do next.
And you still have bills to pay.
Right. There's still life is, still happening, still have bills to pay. And so I start thinking, I need to find a mentor. I need to find a mentor. I just need somebody to hold my hand for the first deal. As soon as the first deal happens, I'll be fine. And we speak into existence what we want. Right?
Words are so
The
important.
power of the tongue.
Yeah.
Right?
Spelling. That's why it's called spelling.
Exactly.
Spells.
Exactly.
Yeah. What we think and speak comes into existence. It's so important.
And people don't understand how powerful their words can be. So when they have negative self-talk, when they are constantly in that mindset of I can't do it, I don't know anybody, I don't have enough, I'm not enough. All of those things come to fruition in our reality because we speak it so often. Even when it's in such a joking manner, right? People disparagingly will talk about themselves and they don't really catch themselves.
Yeah, they don't realize we're all magnets and how we're being is what we're attracting. And so if there's a discrepancy, which there always will be if you're in growth, there's going to be a discrepancy between where you're at and where you want to be. You have to hold the energy and the thoughts and the words of where you want to go and not focus on your lack. You have to focus on abundance if you want to go here, because otherwise you'll always be over here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So even in your lack, oh, I need a mentor, which is, I have a few values in my life. One of them is resourcefulness. I believe you can always figure it out.
Exactly.
And then another one is you need mentorship, like getting in those rooms and paying to find mentorship and get help is crucial because they can shorten the learning curve by so much. So what'd you do next?
So what I do next is that I pick up a client in downtown Santa Ana. I actually have several clients in downtown Santa Ana. And one was a restaurant, a Persian restaurant. And so I guess this woman had just bought it, Nikki. And the old owner said, oh, Sonia gave me a card. I met her. I really liked her. I think you should hire her for your marketing. So she calls me in. I go there. We have some great meetings. So I start working as her marketing consultant. And the Persian community, much like the Latino community, are very tight knit, right? So they come and support each other. And so everybody, all her friends are coming to support her. And so she got really busy right before one of our meetings or during one of our meetings and jumped in the back to go help. So I'm sitting there, like just waiting. And of course, she's feeding me. So she's bringing food out and stuff. And this gentleman is there and he's looking up on the board to see what to order. And we had just been talking about this lentil soup that they made that was delicious. And so I told him, you should order the soup. And he looks over at me. He's like, I should. And I said, I think you should. And he goes, did you make the soup? I go, sounds like I made the soup. Right? And he goes, I'm ordering the soup then. Right? So he goes in, he orders the soup, and he comes and sits next to me in the little table next to me. And he's just like, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Sonia. I'm Nikki's marketing consultant. And I said, who are you? He said, my name is David. I'm a real estate developer. And I said, really? And he goes, are you interested in that? I said, I've been looking for a mentor. And he said, okay. And
Ooh,
so,
I love
yeah,
that.
as we keep talking, we have this great conversation for like an hour. And he's telling me what he does. I kind of tell him what I do. I told him that I had taken this course and that I've, been looking to get into something. And he goes, look, let's do this. He goes, you come do marketing for me. And of course, throw in Nikki's marketing. And he said, and I will teach you everything I know. And his office was in Irvine, or is in Irvine still. And I said, okay. I said, you know what? I'll take you up on the offer. Let's see what you got, right? So I was 2 days later. I think I was in his office, and we had a formal sit down meeting about what this would look like. It was straight commission. It was he was building, him and his company were building about 4 units or buildings a year at this point. This is 8 years ago, right? So he had a couple of partners. He had, a crew. He had his team. And he said, I just need somebody to come in and do acquisitions. And I said, okay, how much are we going to get paid? Again, when you talk about the value of what you bring to somebody, right? I didn't expect to come in and get paid hourly and here's my rate. I was like, I'm here to learn. So I need to take what I can at this point, right? And, but again, I'm not going to do anything small. So I'm there 10, 12 hours a day. I'm calling agents consistently. I'm learning how to get on the MLS.
Yeah.
And it was very sink or swim with David. He was, he's a great mentor, but he's a difficult person to work with. And so this is what you do, go. Right. And I was calling him 8 to 10 times a day. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't understand this. I don't understand this. And one of the ththings that he did was that he made me learn how to evaluate properties very, very quickly.
That's the key, underwriting
it very quickly, and then justifying it, right? Because if I presented him, hey, I think we should take this one down. He was like, what's the zoning? What's the lot size? What can I build on it? What are the rents? What are the exits? What are the comps? It was a constant barrage of questions that I needed to know. And so when people now send me deals and they're like, oh my gosh, you underwrite so fast. And I'm like, yeah, I said, because that's the way that I was trained.
But it's crucial.
And again, it was a difficult situation when you didn't come from that kind of experience and background. And
it's a lot to learn all at once.
Yeah. But I would say one of the things that happened is that 3 months into this, I'm learning, we're starting to, it was 2 months into it. We're starting to pick up some steam, but I had not found a deal. Right. Uh-huh. And I thought, I'm going to find a deal. Of course I'm going to find a deal. Right. I was supremely confident in myself. And I thought, there's no way that I can't find a deal. Especially with 10 hours a day
working,
clocking in, of putting this time in. And again, savings are going down. I'm not doing my marketing clients as much anymore because
you're focused on
now
this.
I'm focused here, right? So I know that I have to start letting go of some of my marketing clients. And so all these things kind of start spiraling. And 2 months into this, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I had a conversation with one of the girls in the office because they weren't very nice to begin with, or helpful. And I just went,
in real estate,
right?
The cutthroat business.
And I went, I'm doing something wrong. And I asked them, and I said, girls, how many deals did you guys get last year? Like, I need some inspiration, right? And they go, well, we got 2. And I was like, oh my God, okay, so you guys did 2 deals last month. And they're like, no, 2 deals last year. And I was like, what? Right? And I freaked out because what he was going to pay me per deal, that wouldn't have covered nothing. That would have covered rent for like a month. And I was like, what? 2 deals? And so I'm freaking out. I have this conversation.
You're like, have this epiphany, like, whoa.
And I was just like, no, oh my gosh. And so when I went to him and I said, you've only did 2 deals last year. And they're getting paid like this. And I was freaking out. And he was just like, relax. He said, you know, you're not them. You come with a completely different skill set than they do. It's only a matter of time before you start picking up. I'm like, yeah, matter of time, but now I have bills to pay, right? I'm completely freaking out.
Yeah.
And what happens is that he goes, okay, I'm going to put you on salary. We're going to do it because I had my own LLC. So he's like, I'm going to contract your LLC. We're gonna pay you monthly, right? Basically like a salary, and I'm gonna front you 2 properties right now. Just relax. And I was like, oh my God, right? I was hyperventilating. After that happened, I think it gave me the peace of mind to kind of really move forward. And then that first year, I acquired 12 properties for the company. The next year, I think it was 18 properties. And then we kind of started snowballing. By the third year, we were partners. I wasn't just a mentee at that point, right? And his acquisition manager, I was the developer. And so by year 3, we're now partnering on stuff. By year 7, we have 36 projects a year
Wow.
on the books. And I go to him and I say, hey, we've renegotiated my contract a dozen times at this point, right? But I still don't have equity, like real equity in our
Right.
projects and in our company. And I've helped build this company to millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I said, so we need to have this conversation. During that time, like year 6, we're having a lot of issues. Those conversations aren't happening. My mom passes away. And I was her primary caretaker. We moved her back from Pennsylvania. She lived with me. And then she lived with my sister and my brother-in-law during COVID to help take care of her. She had Parkinson's. And then unfortunately she passes away. And that was devastating to me. That was devastating to me because everything, when people talk about your why, what was your why? She was my why.
Yeah. And now she's in heaven.
And it was one of those things where I had to reevaluate what was I really doing this for? You know, she was the reason that I would always put up, but there had to be more to it.
It made you reevaluate everything.
Completely reevaluate it. And again, a community of women that I had signed up with before this happened. I was supposed to be part of like this Zoom weekly call that I was like, there's no way I can do this, about manifestation, actually. And I was like, there's no way I can do this. After this happened, I was in this extremely grieving process.
Of course.
Like extreme. But I showed up every week on that Zoom call, and it helped me tremendously to get through all of this. And even though my mentor and myself were having these major conflicts right before this happened, when it happened, he kind of reverted back to the kind of person that I always knew he was. And he was like, what do you need? Because he knew how important my mom was. And so he was like, whatever time you need, whatever money you need. I had money banked with him basically, right? Because we would working on deals and I hadn't been paid for certain things yet. And at this point, I had gotten my license because he encouraged me to go get my license. So he's like, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
You can sell all these products that we're building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go
You
get
might
your
as well.
license, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we let agents double end deals.
Yeah.
But if they didn't want to or they didn't know how, then he was like, I need you to be an agent.
Yeah.
So
Smart.
I went and got my license. Yeah. Like year 3, I want to say same thing. And so I'm licensed at this point. I have a bunch of money banked with him. And then disaster hits. My mom passes away.
It's tough.
Yeah. So I took basically a year to kind of go through the grieving process. I traveled a lot. I was doing wholesale deals on the side. I was basically consulting for 2 or 3 different flippers and developers, just to kind of keep things going. At this point, I was like, okay, what is it that I really want to do? Right?
So it was a year of reflection too.
Completely. And again, I think I went to 13 different airports. Like I was traveling everywhere too, because that was one of the big things my mom would always encourage and say, you love to travel.
Yeah, get out.
And I was like, oh no, I have to work. I have to work because I have to accomplish everything that I told you I was going to accomplish for you. Right? And you get into, Andrew Cordell calls it these financial loops. You get into these trauma loops, right? Where you're like, you know where your goal is. You know that it's up here and you do everything to get there. And then you sabotage right before you get to it. Because what happens if you actually get what you want?
And so many of us do that.
Everybody does it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because you, again, what happens if you actually accomplish your goals,
And
right?
really become that person. That changes everything.
So you sabotage and then you go down to the basement and you start all over. And then it gives you a reason to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is when you actually hit the goal and you realize when it's so in your face that you have to get there, you accomplish it, you do it, and then you toss yourself into another financial loop. It's just hopefully at some point you start recognizing that and going, oh, I'm in a loop. I got to figure out how to get out of this. So you become more conscious of it, but you don't ever escape it. And these are like things that from our childhood that happens of what, the way we think about money and the way we think about wealth. And like you were saying, with women in particular, there's a lot of stigmas that we have around wealth and money and our position within that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of financial loops that we go through. And I realized that I was going through one at that point now, reflecting back on that. But that year was actually financially the most I had ever made. And I wasn't working with my partner. And I was like, wow, I bought 5 acres in Arizona. I mean, 5 acres in California to start a glamping site. I bought 114 acres in Arizona to do the same. That was 2 years ago. And so I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to start glamping. I'm going to figure out everything else. My mentor comes back to me at the beginning of 2023, and says, come back. I want to, really have you on board again. I said, not if we don't have that equity talk that we've been talking about. I said, that's just not happening. As this last year, I made the most money I've ever made without working with you
Yeah.
only.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, so
Why would I do that?
why would I come back unless you're going to offer me equity?
Yeah. Equity's the key, right? That's why Oprah's so wealthy. Equity. She got
It was
equity.
all about equity. Because
Yeah,
again, I
equity's
was
the
like,
key.
I'm never building somebody else's company for them.
Mhm.
I'm not doing that again.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but again, we had this kind of love-hate relationship. We had this kind of thing where he was just like, yes, yes, of course, of course. It always sounded great.
Mhm.
And so he would first quarter said, hey, I'm setting it up. I'm trying to figure out the LLC. I'm trying to figure out, because
Mhm.
my whole thing was that I didn't think should be the only one that had equity. I said, the whole company, there's been people that had been with him for 20 years. And I was like, all of these people have helped make this company. You need to give some kind of profit sharing to the employees, something. I said, I want my equity, but I think they should get something.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're right. I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened. So by June of 2023, I was like, what's happening? It's been 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I've built a team. I had 2 assistants. We had sold a bunch of the properties. We were acquiring more. I was like on this huge momentum to, again, I think at that point, because I had been gone for the year, they hadn't done a lot of acquisitions in the year that I was gone.
Yeah. So you're really
Right.
pivotal
They had
in the
built
group.
a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed to rent it and get it out, because again, this was during COVID, in the middle of COVID. So they were like, we need to get it rented and get it out. So I had a rental assistant, I had a sales assistant, I had my acquisition assistant.
Mm-hmm.
So I was building all these processes and teams for my mentor, going, you let me take the lead, you get me equity, we can do this together. And he was like, yes. Then, like I said, in June 2023, he's like, you know what, Sonia, it's not going to happen. And he said, and furthermore, I've been fronting certain monies, and I think you owe me at this point.
Oh.
And I went, wow. I said, that's not the conversation I thought we were going to have. And I said, we've been selling product, we've been renting things, we've been getting acquisitions. I said, I think the team has been killing it. And we had an agreement beginning of the year. And he's like, it's never going to happen. I said, okay. I said, well, I'm giving you my notice. August 1st, I'll terminate my contract. I said, and I'm going to launch my own. And he said, okay, good luck. That was the end of it. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't,
Yeah.
we would have some ugly fights. We would have some heated, passionate, like, I'm right, you're wrong kind of arguments about properties, about the way the business was run, about all these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this time I was very like, okay,
You were certain of yourself.
Yeah. And I said, it is what it is.
Mhm.
I'm not going to convince you. You've been in business for 30 years.
Mm-mm.
You are who you are. You know, he's made some amazing leaps and bounds, I would say, in the way that he did business because we met and because we worked together. But I wasn't going to change who he was. And I was like, it was just, what is this still the right place for me? It wasn't a question of his company anymore. It was, is this right for me? Is this in alignment with what I want to do and who I am? And especially after that year of reflection, it definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I just said, okay, I'm out. And so August 1st of 2023, I launched on my own. Had no idea what I was going to do again. And I just kind of had a kind of vague idea of a framework. And I said, I will do some wholesaling. I'll do some flips because that's a lower barrier of entry. I understand what I have to do. I have to stack capital.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
I'll get right back into development because
Mhm.
the one thing with development and knowing that I started there was that you have to have capital and you have to have longer time frames for these things because your hold times are 18 to 24 months, 36 months. This is not a quick flip where you're out in 4 to 6 months, 8 months, right?
Yeah.
And the first draws and your acquisitions, you're talking, 200, 300, 400,000. You're not talking 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. So I knew that that was still the path that made the most financial sense, but I knew I wasn't in a place where I could do it yet, leap out
Yeah.
on my own, you know? And I didn't have a general contractor. I was going to have to start building a team. And I said, okay, I have a plan. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm going to do. And interesting, in September of 2023, one of my old developers, because I would wholesale to other developers,
Right.
because we were so niche about what we built and how we built it that if it didn't fit our requirements, it was gone. And I would tell my old partner, I said, there's no point in us throwing away these leads.
Yeah, we might as well do something with
We got to
them.
do something. I said, can I
Mhm.
wholesale them? And he was
Mm.
like, do whatever you want, make whatever money you want, And
Mhm.
so I would kick down leads to other developers, got to know everybody, obviously, right? Networking, all the stuff. I started doing events on site, you know, just all the things that I knew that I wanted to start moving into. And so in September of 2023, an old developer calls me and he's like, hey, so I've been inactive for a year and a half
Yeah.
and I'm ready to get back into it. Do you have any deals for me? And how are things going with your old partner? And I said, yeah, interesting enough. I launched my own last month on my own. And he said, really? And he goes, wait, so you're not working with anybody? I said, oh, I'm working with everybody. That's the difference. I said, I'm working with everybody now. And he was like, okay. And he goes, well, who's going to build for you? And it's funny because I had probably sent him 1 to 2 deals a year for the last 8 years.
Wow. Long term.
Long term,
You've known him a
good
long time.
guy. I didn't like his design, but I liked his build. His build quality was always top tier. And he would, the kind of person, like 4 years ago, I sent him a property, connected him with somebody, and he was like, yeah, this looks great. I stepped out of the deal, right? I was kind of like, I connected you. If it works, I think he was going to pay me like $5,000 or something for it. And I said, hopefully it works out for you. I completely forgot about it. I want to say 4 months later, he closed on that deal.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I had horrible follow-up. So I didn't follow up. And
no systems in place.
No system. And but he calls me up and he goes, hey, Sonia, I have a check for you. And I was like, for what? And he said, for that deal that you sent me like 4 months ago, I closed on it. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so that was the kind of integrity that he had.
Yeah, I like that.
That I'm like, I didn't even remember to call him to follow up
to get your money,
to get my money. I didn't even know that he was still in communication with that agent to get that deal closed. And he was like, I'm going to take care of you because you're the one that connected me, right? And so those are the kind of things that I remember most about him. And going to his sites, he would say, hey, that deal that you got me, I finished building it. You should come and check it out. And I'll be like, yeah. So I would go and I'd walk in. He'd want my opinion on his decisions, on his design decisions and stuff. And I'd be like, I think you kind of missed the mark on this or whatever. But his actual build was always top tier. And I was so impressed with that. So when he comes to me in September 2023 and he goes, I want to build for you. And I said, okay. And he goes, I know what kind of deal you always wanted with your mentorship. He goes, with your old mentor. He goes, and I want to do everything 50-50 with you. He goes, it's your company. I
Yeah.
just want to build. And he said, I know what you did. I know
Wow.
how you built your last company.
He knew.
Yeah.
He saw the value.
And he was like, will you take me on? And I said, well, let's try to see how we work together and we'll go from there. In December 2023, we got our first project under contract. January, we closed in 2024. And from January to December of last year of 2024, we acquired 10 projects together. We've exited 2, and I've raised close to $4 million in private money.
Wow.
To take all those deals down.
Sonia, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's been.
I have chills.
Thank you. It's one of those things where I even go, how did this last year just happen?
It didn't just happen though, did it?
No, it didn't. And that's the reality is we know that it didn't just happen, that it's been in the making. It's been all of the skills and stacking them and putting them in the right place and meeting the right people and trusting your intuition and knowing where the alignment is supposed to go and making those decisions based on those things. Not just did it make sense or did it no. Is this aligned?
And you never gave up.
Never.
I feel like
that wasn't an option ever.
I just feel like so many people think this is a short game.
Right.
And I remember when I first got my real estate license 21 years ago, there was an old guy working back in the olden days. You could work the desk as an agent to get the walk-in leads or the calls, right? And I was coming into the office. I was brand new. And he's like, oh, who are you? And I just tell him, oh, I'm Colleen. And he's like, he was an old timer, right? He says, Colleen, do you want a piece of advice from me? And I'm like, you bet I do. He says, don't quit before the magic happens. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, everyone gives up. I see all these new people come in all the time, and then they just quit, right? It gets hard. They give up, and they don't realize you got to pivot. And there's a lot of self-reflection and personal development. And there's a lot of give and take, and you have to develop your skill set and your relationships with people. And he says, so many people give up before the magic happens. He goes, will you promise me? Just promise me. You won't give up before the magic happens. And I thought, well, that's so good. You didn't give up before the magic happens.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, the kind of skill sets that you have to have that talk about limiting beliefs. I think I've always been very confident, right? I don't know if I told you this, Colleen, but I've lost 150 pounds.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I was 150 pounds heavier and still talking on stages and the same kind of confidence level. Nothing changed personality wise.
Right.
And I think a lot of people and women especially kind of go like, do I look a certain way? Am I getting a certain thing? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with being very proud of yourself and aesthetics and those kind of things, but it's also not limiting unless you let it be.
It's all a story we tell ourselves.
Completely. And so, I would go whitewater rafting. It would hurt for a week afterwards because I was 150 pounds heavier, but I would do it. Right? So those are the kind of things that I never limited myself by what I look like. Again, being a Latina, being a woman in a male-dominated construction space. You're not even talking just the real estate space.
No, construction.
The development space.
Yeah.
There is almost no females. There is no women in that space. There's like 2 of us that I know of, right? That do these kind of things, that do the 2 to 4 unit builds specifically. And when you do as many deals as I've done, I did almost 100 deals with my ex-partner. Then you get to know everybody, right? Especially the movers and shakers that are doing a lot of work in the city of LA.
Yeah.
Right? Because I do almost exclusively city of LA.
Yeah. What do? You tell people. So I think what I understand that you do is you buy a house.
Yes.
With certain zoning, you tear down the house, and then you put units on it, ADUs on it.
Build by right. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So for the formula that I learned that was the most efficient and again, highest and best use was that you take existing properties that have a certain square footage, like over 5,000 square foot. At City of LA to me is the easiest because my team is there. I have expediters. We know the city process. I know the codes and the development standards like the back of my hand. So it's just quicker for me to evaluate. And you can't get the appreciation or the rents and force the value anywhere else in the country like you can in LA. That just doesn't happen in Southern California, but in LA specifically.
Yeah.
So I take a 5,000 square foot lot and bigger that's zoned for multi-units.
Right.
Right. There's no rent control on it then. Then if it's owner occupied, even
Mhm.
better. If it's tenant occupied, we have to do some finagling. But if it's owner occupied, we tear it down and we back up to what the city wants, because we don't ever build what we want. We build what the city wants. And
Smart.
what makes the most sense. If they want 4 units plus an ADU, then we do 4 units plus an ADU. We max out the room count, we max out how big they are, because that maxes out your rent and therefore gets you a better price per square foot and comp when you're exiting. And so that's what I do in a nutshell. Is that's always my first option in development.
Mhm.
When I started raising private money, what I realized is that people didn't want to wait 18 to 24 months to turn their money over with people that they just
Met.
met.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, again, I get sent 10 to 12 leads a day, I would
Mhm.
say,
Mhm.
because of my networking and speaking and all the different places in my social media presence. And so why am I going to throw away leads? There's things that I can do here. There's add values to multi-units that I can add units to, that I can add ADUs to, that I can use SB9, lot split, add, do a legal duplex. There's all these different strategies that I can use. Why am I throwing these leads away? So I started looking at multi-units that can add value to, that were vacant or that we can significantly raise the rent and
Yeah.
get vacant. And then I started looking at flips, but only flips that had at least a six-figure exit net. So I had to be able to say, when we're out, we're out over six figures. Otherwise, they don't make sense.
Yeah.
They're not for our business model.
So that's your criteria threshold.
Those are my
Mhm.
my criteria, my thresholds. Because
Mhm.
again, at the point where I'm at,
Mhm.
to move the kind of funds that we do and allocate the kind of resources that we do, it
Mhm.
doesn't make sense for 10, 20, $30,000 profit.
Yeah.
We're beyond that in the business model that I'm at right now. So it has to make sense. The numbers have to break down a certain way for us to take down a project. But again, when people again vocalize that there's no good deals, that it's saturated, that I'm like, what are you talking about? I get to cherry pick the deals that
Yeah.
I've taken down.
I feel like it's such a limiting story that they tell themselves.
Completely. That's why I said I'm like, I don't have any shortage of deals, And again, it might be because I'm looking at them creatively also,
Yeah.
right? So I love the idea of creative financing. I've never taken anything down creative financing yet, so I'm hoping to this year to do some sub twos. But
I'm gonna challenge you to do, we bought our first property sub two this last year.
nice.
And it took me longer than I expected it to because it was a skill set that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like I came with a lot of skills, but there's a nuance to it, right? Just like in any part
Right.
of real estate, right? Just like I don't understand what you do exactly, right? I mean, I know it a little, but I don't know anything really about what you do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope you do get one creatively
Oh,
because it's it is mind blowing that I have a deed. John and we have the deed to a property with no bank. Like
right.
that is mind blowing. I have an accountability partner. You met her, Bridget,
Oh yeah.
and we joined the real estate community at the same time, and we check on each other all the time to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because solopreneur can be
Daunting
lonely.
and lonely. Yeah.
Yeah, and emotional roller coaster,
Yes.
right? Like, woo. But she had a question for you,
Sure.
and a couple people had other questions. But it says, how long do you have to? And I think you kind of answered this, but how long do you build relationships to get private money partners and lenders to lend you money? Like, what does that look like?
That's a great question. How long do you have to have the network?
Yeah, how does it
I
look?
literally have somebody has placed 100,000 with me in 15 minutes, and others have taken will never place money with you. I don't care how long they've known you. I don't care if they're family and friends forever, and they see you successful. They are never going to make that transition to knowing that they can invest with you. So again, limiting beliefs, got to get that out of the way. I originally said, okay, my messaging for private money is interesting. At the beginning of 2024, when we took down our first deal, I didn't have any network of high net worth individuals. I didn't
Mhm.
know anybody with capital. I had my old contact from my old mentor, but obviously they were investing with him. I didn't want to
Mhm.
like poach anybody. I had no idea how I was going to raise capital. And I thought I couldn't. It was so, and again, this is only a year ago.
Yeah.
So a year ago, with all the experience that I have, with all I know how to underwrite, I know a deal is going to make sense, I know it's going to make money. And I still could not wrap my head around, how do I raise money? I don't know anybody. And I our first deal that we took down, my partner brought in his private money lenders who had been waiting for him for a year and a half to build, right? So he had some funds ready to go. And even our second deal that we took down was with his lenders. And he said, I'm capped. That's it. I'm done. I don't have any more lenders until we exit these projects. You want to get 20 properties this year? You need to find capital. And he challenged me and I said, okay, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to start, just kind of doing what I do. I think deal number 3, I decided, I reached out into the network of real estate people that we know, right? And there's a brother and sister, is Gene and AJ, which I credit them. They're amazing. They'd been in the flipping for like the last 4 years. And they're the only ones that I knew that had raised any significant amount of capital. And they're young and they're like, had only done maybe, I think, 3 or 4 flips at this point. And I had been a speaker at their masterminds, right? So I had gone to speak at the different masterminds that they paid money to go be a part of. And I called them up and I said, hey, I need to learn how to raise capital, guys. Can you guys show me? And they were like, what? They're like, how do you not know how to raise capital? You do all these things, you know all these things. And I'm like, but I've never had to raise capital. My old partner raised capital for me. I never had to worry about that. And I said, and again, I'm not above going out and asking somebody who knows what they're doing how to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Help. Yeah.
Oh,
Being resourceful. That's
exactly.
that's one of my big things.
Hold on, my
Yeah.
microphone's coming on.
Join us for part 2 with Sonia Ramirez on Born to be Brave.